There are many blacks that have intense amount of hatred towards the white Southerners who instituted slavery and Jim Crow that disenfranchised black people from voting and made their economic futures very, very dim. But I want to give you a perspective that will make things very, very clear and will actually present to you the case that the white Southerner was shooting himself in the foot. Now, there are three phases to economic growth. The first phase is farming. We've seen this throughout every empire, such Rome, Greece, Ottoman Empire. They all had farming. The second phase is industrialization. So we saw this in England in the late 17th, early 18th century, where they introduced the Industrial Revolution and it revolutionized the world. And then the third phase is going to be a service-based economy, essentially deindustrialization, what we see in America right now, an economy based on innovation and consumption. Those are the three phases. If you notice, the Southern economy was stuck in the first phase. It was an agricultural economy based on farming. The white Southerner was a farmer. And so he had to rely on labor in order to do the work for him. What he did was he relied on slaves to come from Africa and the Caribbean, to come into the South and do the work for him. And he made a decent amount of profit. He was able to generate enough profit to where he can get homes and he can become an aristocrat of some sort, become wealthy. But what he did to his future was that he condemned himself to always being a farmer because the incentive structure in that institution makes it the case that it's very, very unlikely that he can ever get out of it. Slaves were very cheap compared to machines and other equipment to industrialize your economy. If slaves are cheap, it means that if one slave were to die on the field today, tomorrow you can get another slave very quickly to be replaced. And your profit margins are virtually going to be the same. There is no incentive for you to change when the profit margins are fairly high compared to what other farmers in the area are doing themselves. So you are stuck in that system. So if you really think about it, the Civil War was a blessing for the Southerner because now he was forced out of that system. Since slavery is abolished, he doesn't have the human labor that he had to do the work for him. He has now the ability to look and see, well, what else can I do? But the white Southerner didn't do that. He doubled down in being a farmer and he found exploited labor in blacks through sharecropping, which is pretty much feudalism, in order to continue farming. But he's stuck in the first phase. And if you're stuck in the first phase, and if you're just a farming economy, how can you compete with the North, which was in industrialization? And by the time the 1930s, 1940s ended, it was well on its way to being a service-based economy, the most innovative, the most consumption-driven economy in the world. There is no way you can compete with the North if you're just a farm-based economy. There's just no way. And so the white Southerner was really sealing his fate by relying on a system of exploitation, relying on a system of racial superiority, where white supremacy was going to be his life force and how he was going to realize himself in this world, in his life. He shot himself in the foot because if he had treated black people with respect and he had tried to develop them as good human beings who could be productive for society, he can have that labor force that he can use for manufacturing, and he can have that labor force that he can educate to enter into these corporations and these businesses that can innovate and produce companies like Google, Facebook, Instagram. But he wasn't going to do that with his system of segregation and racial inferiority and racial superiority. He just wasn't going to do that. You can't get far if 30 to 40% of your population are illiterate slaves who don't even have the ability to write their own name. And so instead of looking at the white Southerner with intense amount of hatred, you have to feel sorry for him because he was very foolish and very ignorant to do what he did to blacks and ultimately to himself. It's better to have pity than anger because knowledge is power. And when you know how an economy works, you know what to do and what not to do. And the white Southern didn't know. And that's a pity. And that's a shame. I hope that was helpful.